Konnichiwa, Pakusetachi. I'm Puppy-Sensei, the Puppy Girl Japanese teacher VTuber of Irium US. I make Japanese language content to help you level up your abilities. The wheel of grammar gives and the wheel of grammar takes away. Today we're looking at ga. Just the particle ga. Boring! No, that's actually not true. Ga is weirdly complicated. We'll get into it. We'll start by looking at the grammar card. So, we know that ga is one of many Japanese particles. For a broad explanation of particles in general, you can see my recent video on how to use Japanese particles. Ga specifically is the subject marking particle. However, if I'm being honest, this grammar card is so simplified to actually be almost useless. It tells us nothing. Unfortunately, it's going to be very difficult for us to understand what ga does in a sentence without also understanding wa, another basic Japanese particle that can also be used to indicate the subject of a sentence. If we think about a Japanese sentence, Japanese has various slots into which a particle can end up getting placed. And for wa and ga, the most common slot where we're going to see these particles appearing is going to be here, right? So think about this as a skeletal sentence. When did something happen? What's the subject of our sentence? What's the object of the sentence? And finally, what's the verb? This too is incredibly rudimentary, but this kind of skeletal system lets us know a lot about the very basic Japanese sentence, right? So we know that the subject or the topic of the sentence is going to be marked by this wa or ga. I've given you both here, and I'll explain why, but that wa or ga is usually going to be found after the time indicated if and only if there is a time relevant to the action mentioned. In other words, we may not need ni. We may not need it because there may not be a time stated. Perhaps it's just something that happens usually, right? But also, this subject marked with wa or ga is usually going to be found before the object which is marked with o, and that's only going to be the case if and only if there's some kind of relevant object for the sentence in question, and not every sentence is going to have a direct object. A lot of Japanese sentences will just have a subject and a verb. Some Japanese sentences will just have a verb. They may not need an object to be specified in the sentence, and that's okay. But when we have a time, and we have a subject, and we have an object, then all of those things are kind of going to usually go in this sequence. Something something ni, something something wa or ga, something something o, and then finally your verb. Okay? Let's look at an example. So this sentence is Gogo 7時に manager-sama wa or ga, I've given you both here, either or, 晩ご飯を作ります. That sentence means manager-sama makes dinner at 7 p.m. But let me carefully break this down for you. So, gogo indicates afternoon, p.m. So, gogo 7時に indicates that something happened at 7 p.m. What was it that happened at 7 p.m.? Something was made, indicated by the verb tsukurimasu at the end of the sentence. Now, that's not past tense, that's present tense, so it happens maybe regularly at 7 p.m. Okay? So, tsukurimasu means to make something. What was being made? Bangohan. Bangohan means dinner or the evening meal, and bangohan was marked with o, which lets us know that it is the direct object. It's the thing being made. So now we know when it happened, now we know what was made, and now we know that there's a verb that means it got made, right? Okay, so who was actually doing the verb? Who was doing the making? Manager-sama. And we know that manager-sama is the subject who makes dinner at 7 p.m. because manager-sama is marked with either the topic or subject particle wa or ga. Now, as I said, I've given you both wa and ga here. But I want to remind you once again that wa and ga are very, very, very slippery. When to use one and when to use the other is so tricky that even native speakers mostly use their kind of language intuition to determine one over the other. If you want to know how complicated these things really, really are, listen to a Japanese speaker speak a sentence and then stop them and say, hey, why did you use wa there? Why did you use ga there? And 9 times out of 10, you're going to see the wheels spinning in their head as they go, I don't know. I don't know why I picked wa in this sentence or ga in this sentence, right? Because generally speaking, it's just kind of intuition. Okay, now let's split up these sentences and look at them directly so that we can kind of better understand exactly what's going on in each one, because there is nuance here that we can get at. Okay, so now we have the first sentence, which we're using wa, and the second sentence, which we're using ga. In the first sentence, we have Gogo 7時にマネージャー様は晩ご飯を作ります. And I'd like to translate that as for manager sama, they make dinner at 7 p.m. Then in our second sentence, we have 午後7時にマネージャー様が晩ご飯を作ります. And I'd like to translate that sentence as manager sama is the one who makes dinner at 7 p.m. Really, the emphasis in this sentence is placed on manager-sama. That's what we want to kind of focus on. We want the attention to go to manager-sama, and that's why we're marking it with ga here. Okay? Selecting wa gives us this feel of, well, as for manager-sama, they do this and this and this. But selecting ga really gives our sentence the feel of, it's manager-sama who makes dinner, not anybody else. Basically, with ga, you've put more emphasis on the subject. You're really highlighting the subject, not just indicating it. So, in my recent particles video, I went over some places where you are assured to use ga over wa. Let me list those again for you, okay? So, we will always use ga when the verb in question is a verb of existence or state. Arimas and imas are verbs of existence. Just like this sentence, kuruma ga arimasu. There is a car, or I have a car. Arimasu and imasu are almost always going to appear with the particle ga. You will have subject, ga arimasu. And that's because ga indicates that there's some kind of state of existence. Something is, right? Next, we're always going to have ga with verbs of preference. Verbs of preference like ski or hoshi are always going to use ga. Ostensibly, that's because they also indicate some kind of ongoing state. What's actually being done in the sentence, kuruma ga suki desu, I like my car. It kind of expresses the idea that I am in the state of liking something. So in Japanese, ski and hoshi do not necessarily indicate an active verb. It's more like I am in the state of enjoying this thing, right? Basically, it's the case that when we have a verb that's not an active verb, or if we have a situation that is purely descriptive, we're usually going to select ga over wa. An example of this would be a sentence like, Kaminari ga kowai. I'm afraid of thunder. Or thunder is scary, right? We can almost feel that that's a little bit stated. It's just kind of creating a situation where this is just a thing that is, less an active verb. Again, that's a deeper grammatical lesson that I really want to address today, but basically when our sentence expresses something being, rather than something doing, we're usually going to select ga over wa. I'm going to explore this more in another lesson soon, so make sure you like and subscribe so that you can keep watch for me to walk you through this distinction in more depth. It would really help me a lot. Onegaishimasu. As I said before, anytime we want to put an emphasis on something or introduce a new topic, we will select ga, just like in the sentence, Puppy-Sensei ga oshieteimasu. It's Puppy-Sensei that is teaching. I'm the one teaching. We're going to use ga in cases where we really want emphasis to be placed on the subject, or maybe we want to set the record straight that this is the subject that's doing some action. So if somebody told you that manager-sama wa ima oshieteiru, manager-sama is teaching right now, and then somebody else wanted to correct that and say, no, that's not right. That's some kind of misunderstanding. So they may want to correct that misunderstanding with a sentence like, Puppy-Sensei ga oshieteiru. No, it's Puppy-Sensei who is teaching, right? The ga there indicates the emphasis is on me. I'm the one that is teaching. Okay, there is one last thing that I want to cover today. So far, we've been talking about wa and ga as though they were an either-or. We've looked at several situations where you would need to select wa or select ga depending purely on what we're trying to accomplish in the given activity or sentence. But there are cases, and quite a few of them, where we're going to use both wa and ga in the same sentence. For example, Pakuse tachi wa atama ga ii. Pakuse tachi wa atama ga ii. My students are smart. Pakuse tachi wa atama ga ii. Atama ga ii on its own is a stative situation. It means head is good. Whoa. No. What I meant was in Japanese, atama ga ii means your head is smart. It's brain work good. Okay. And in the phrase atama ga ii, we've selected ga because it's not an active descriptor. Your head isn't doing anything. It's just being good. It's being smart. Atama ga ii. My head is smart. However, when we want to describe someone as doing the state of being smart, we need both wa and ga. Somebody wa atama ga ii, right? And so we get the sentence, Pakuse tachi wa atama ga ii. The head of my students is smart. Or maybe, since we're not using no, the best translation would be, as for my students, they are smart. Right? Does that make sense? Pakuse tachi wa atama ga ii. As for my students, y'all are smart. Okay. Let's take a look at another quick example that requires both wa and ga. Hiroshima wa okonomiyaki ga oishii desu ne. Hiroshima wa okonomiyaki ga oishii desu ne. We can translate this as for Hiroshima, they've got really delicious okonomiyaki, don't they? Right? It's another case where we have a stative situation. Okonomiyaki ga oishii desu ne. The okonomiyaki is in the state of being delicious. However, we want to describe a particular case or a particular location in which that okonomiyaki is tasty, right? And that specific situation that we're kind of describing here is in Hiroshima. Hiroshima wa, as for Hiroshima, okonomiyaki ga oishii desu ne. They've got really tasty okonomiyaki. Ga is really a very slippery piece of Japanese grammar, and even here, I do not do all that much justice into explaining exactly how interesting and complex the interplay between ga and wa really is. I think it's important to keep having these conversations and to keep thinking about how our knowledge of particles can improve our overall understanding of the Japanese language. So I hope this little tiny discussion helped just a bit. But anyway, that's all for today, so let's spin our Wheel of Grammar! And the Wheel of Grammar has given us aida ni. Aida ni. That's a good one. I think that'll be a great grammar point for us to take a look at after I get back from my vacation. Yay! Vacation dog, vacation dog, vacation dog. Keep in mind that because I'm on vacation, next week's grammar drop might be just a little bit delayed. Please expect it out on Thursday or Friday instead of Wednesday. I hope, anyway. お願い。待ってください。ちょっとだけ。Please wait for me. Anyway, I'll see you then. また来週! Thanks for watching. I'm glad you watched until the end. You can find my other content here. Also, it would make me really happy if you would check out jinxedgaming.com. If you're into zero-calorie gaming fuel and Oshi cups, you will love their products. Puppy-Sensei recommends the tangy strawberry flavor. It's so yummy. Remember to use code SENSEI at checkout for 10% off your order. Can't wait to see you next time. Mata ne!